So the first thing we're going to talk about is adding lights to models. I've got a model down here that I hope everyone can see that there are lights on, directional as well. So I've done this on DCC, but I think it's pretty transferable to DC if that's how you model. We can go to the next slide. All right, so I've got a list of the materials required to do something like this, which is some surface mount diodes or little tiny LEDs. You can use bigger, but in N scale, obviously we've got a bit of limited room. Go backwards. Cool, thank you. Some evergreen tubing.
Should be press next.
I'm going to ruin this.
No,
cool.
We'll be right.
All right. I use evergreen tubing. I've taken some photos and put it there, but either the rectangle tube or the square tube. And that's to create a box to hold the light in there for when you add fiber optics in. So I'll send it around the room so people can have a look at it. But that's the little light box covered in foil there. So you also need fiber optics, some aluminium foil to block the light from coming outside of the tube and illuminating the inside of your locomotive. Glues, I use microcrystal clear and super glue, and we'll get to why we use that in a minute, and black paint. So the little surface mount LEDs, as you can see on the end of the match head there, are super tiny, so they work really well for N scale. You're able to...
603 is quite big.
Yeah, is it?
You can get 01, 02.
All right, I would not do that because I lose a lot of these, and they're quite fiddly and small, I find. And I'd highly recommend that if you're going to get some, get them pre-wired. Wiring them yourself, I wouldn't know even how to start. They've got the tiniest little contact pads, and when they come pre-wired, it's a lot easier to use. So we'll go first. So what I'd do is usually you'd cut a length of your tubing. So I'll send some around this way. We all know what it looks like. There's a packet to go around there as well. And cut a little notch in the tubing to place your LED in, and make sure your LED is facing down the tube. So you don't want it facing backwards. You want it facing the open end of the tube. And yeah, as you can see in that little second photo, the LED is being glued in there facing forward. And that's what we're going to use that tube to put your fiber optics through. To get your light coming out the front of your locomotive. It means that you can do all of the lights that are on there. I think there are 6 individual lights, all coming from one LED a little bit inside the locomotive. So instead of having to wire in 6 LEDs for each separate part, you use that. Any questions on that part? Oh, cool. All right. All right, so then what you do is you'd seal off the end of that tube with another bit of plastic to give it a good strong backing, and then you'd wrap the tube in aluminium foil, or you could paint it black, or anything that's going to block the light escaping that plastic. So as that little LED works its way around, you'll see that I've wrapped it up a bit like a present in aluminium foil, and just fold it around, and use super glue to hold that alfoil in place, and obviously leave the end that you're going to have the light coming out of open on there. So that's what the LED looks like over on the right, with the light coming out of the tube. And yeah, you can then seal off any more light leakage from it with a bit of black paint. Let that black paint dry, and then do it again until you get like a satisfying result. Because otherwise what will happen is you'll get some light bleed out of it, and you might be illuminating the tracks from underneath your model if there are any gaps, or if you've got really thin materials on your model, what may happen is the model itself will illuminate. So you really want to block off a lot of that light leakage there.
You're using bright white?
I use a mixture. So if it's a modern locomotive, I'll use a bright white. If it's an older locomotive, I'll use a warm white. For the reverse lights, red light. So yeah, you can use whatever color LED that you want to get through. But yeah, if you want 2 different tones of light, I've built a model of a Velocity, the V-Line Velocity, that has bright white lights and warm white lights. You would just hook the LEDs up in series, not parallel. So you could get the two lights coming out of that same thing and just wire in your fiber optics there. Now, when you're working with the fiber optics, which I've got some here to pass around and show people. I'll get a spin. I've gotten mine from eBay or just the internet. If you've, I know sometimes $2 shops have like those light things that, spin around and that, and you can get fiber optics out of that and use them pretty well, especially because we're in N scale, we don't need massive lengths of it. All of that works really quite well. You can get all different sizes as well. So if you want bigger headlamps, smaller marker lights, or even smaller lights, you just search up the different sizes. So I've managed to find it in 0.75 mil, 0.5 mil, 1 mil, and I found some really interesting stuff which was 0.3 mil, but it's all in a core. So what I have to do is strip this back, and it'll actually bring out multiple strands of 0.3 mil as well. So look around at your options and what you can find. And one of the other things that you can do, handy being a smoker to have a lighter on hand, is to create a lens on your fiber optic. So if you hold up the fiber optic to your lighter and slowly pull it in, it'll kind of melt it into a lensy kind of shape. So I'll pass that around and you'll see it on the end there. That it kind of creates a little bulb. And look, if you do too much and accidentally set the fiber optic on fire, which I've done before, you just chop off that little bit of the end and it will keep on working. But yeah, it should round it off, gently hold it up to the heat, to do that to the side of the flame, and slowly bring it into it, but don't put it like right inside the flame, because you'll set the fiber optics on fire. In that case, where did my clicker go? All right. So while those things are circulating the room, you put the light box, like once you've tested it all out, made sure it's okay, find your position inside the locomotive that you want to put it in, and wire it in. So as I said, I do it on DCC, so it's pretty simple with the different color leads. You might have to play around with it a little bit for DC. And then what you want to do is secure that in. I usually use micro crystal clear to secure it in, because if you make a mistake or you burn out an LED when you're wiring it all in, it's easy to pop that off with micro crystal clear as opposed to, super glue or something like that. The next step would be to then get your fiber optics in place. So, you drill out the headlight holes and marker light holes on your locomotive. And you drill that out to the size of the fiber optic that you're using. So if you're using a 1 mil bit like I did on the top of that one, you drill out a 1 mil hole with that, and maybe use a 1.5 to, I don't know the right term, but like make it countersunk. I think that's the right term. So when you've melted the end of your fiber optic, it sits inside the model and doesn't sit protruding out as well. So that's a way you can like countersink it. So drill your hole first and then your larger hole, and that will help you out with getting it to sit flush with the locomotive. Then what you do is you would, I find as well, when you're putting it together, always cut your fiber optics longer than you need. Because as you have to maneuver it around inside your locomotive to get into the light box, you don't want to leave yourself too short. So yeah, always cut it a little bit longer, do a test fit with it, put the end of the fiber optic into the light box and make sure the light's coming through all right. And then slowly chop away at the other end of the fiber optic that's going into the light box to get it the right length. And then again, using micro crystal clear or something, something that will hold it but won't hold it really tight, to glue everything in place. I did make a mistake once of using super glue, and I cut the end of the fiber optic too short, and then I had to actually drill the fiber optic out without destroying the model to be able to refit it. So take it really slow, and yeah, use soft glues and nothing that's way too hard. The fiber optics themselves and like the opening of the little light box there, that will emit light, and the fiber optics kind of glow as well when there's light traveling through them. So once it's all test fitted in place and looking really good and you're happy with the results, go over all the fiber optics with some black paint and the light box as well, and it'll stop you from having like illuminated leads of light inside your cab, and again stopping that light bleed out. Are there any questions on that slide? Cool. All right. So look, it's a bit hard to see. That's the inside of the G-Class that you're seeing there on the table. But there are two light boxes fitted in there. There's one for the rear lights, so the red light is the smaller tube. So because I've got 6 white lights at the front, I've used that that thicker rectangle tubing that got handed around the room. And then for the red lights, the rear lights, I've used the square one. So just, trying to optimize space. If you're running low on space as well, you can file down that evergreen, to thinner walls, because you're going to be wrapping it with the foil or painting it black. It doesn't really matter about the thickness of the walls as long as there's some structure there to kind of hold the piece in place. So if you've got really low clearances, don't worry about shaving a little bit off to give yourself a bit more play inside the locomotive that you've got. And then I'll go around here without knocking anything over. These kind of black lines that you can see here, that's the actual fiber optics with the black paint painted over the top of it to stop that light bleed that I was talking about. Any questions on that one?
Yeah. Cory, with the black paint, are you just using like an acrylic paint? Or?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I just use a little jar of, the Tamiya acrylic paint, and I don't really water it down or thin it because I want it to go on thick, and just pretty much run it along the lines. And it usually will, especially on the fiber optics, it'll usually wrap itself around, and you just drag your brush down the fiber optics. And like, as long as you're, generally pretty careful with it, you can go to town on it in there. And so another part of that step is to secure the fiber optics into the light boxes as well, because you don't want them to wiggle around too much or pop out somehow. Sometimes you have to make the fiber optics go around the mechanism itself if you're fitting it into the shell of the locomotive. So yeah, securing it in again with some micro crystal clear and painting over the top of that black just to seal off everything will give you the best results as well. And look, at the end, if you want to come up, I can open up the G-Class and you can have a look inside. It might be a bit easier to see. I tried my best macro photography on this one, but yeah, it was a little bit hard to see inside there. So that's a little picture that I drew of how I wire them up for reverse lighting on DCC. Any questions on wiring it up there? No? All right.
Cory,
yeah.
So before the picture you showed on the inside, you had 2 light boxes inside.
Yep.
And one of those is the white, one's a red.
Yep.
Is that for the forward, and then do you need another 2 boxes for reverse?
Yeah, so in total, in the G-Class there are 4 light boxes. We've got the forwards headlights, and when the forward headlights are on, the rear marker lights are on. So because you've only got 2 leads for lighting on a DCC chip, you've got your forwards and rear. What I do is I wire them again in series. I always have to get that right. Parallel, wait, I don't know. I've confused myself. Someone who knows about series and parallel. Parallel is one after the other?
No, that's series.
Series. Okay, you want to use series on wiring the LEDs in. If you do it in parallel, one LED can actually steal the current from another one because they all operate on slightly different frequencies or waves. I don't know. Yeah, okay, I've got a nod there. Excellent. Voltage, is it?
The whites use more voltage than the reds.
Ah, excellent. Yeah, so that's definitely what I encountered once, was when I did it in parallel, the white took the light out of the red and couldn't figure out why until I went in series. So what you're doing when you're wiring this in is you want to do the headlight for the forwards direction. You connect that onto your positive lead. Then from the negative, you travel it through to the positive of your rear light, and then complete the circuit back to the DCC chip. So with the lighting functions on there, it's always headlights on, marker lights on, and then in the reverse direction the same, or just turning off the lighting completely. All right, cool. All right, we'll go on to the next topic. But is there any more questions about lighting while I'm here? It's probably the best way to do it.
Just a comment.
Yep.
In DC, obviously, you have to put resistors.
Yes, yes. There are also resistors in this as well. Forgot to mention them. Definitely put resistors in because you don't want things to explode once they're all in place. I always wire in at least one resistor on the positive and one on the negative. So both sides of the circuit are protected by a resistor. Cool bananas. All right. Now, did everyone get to see the little lighting box in foil? Fantastic. Did you see the wires on that came pre-installed? Super thin, really tiny wires that come with those. I've used them to also create multiple unit cables. So on each of the LEDs or the SMDs, you get a decent little length of wire when you order them. I ordered mine from, I think it was AliExpress, and they came in a packet of 20 for about $5, all ready to go in all different colors. So what I tend to do is cut half the wire off because I don't need the whole length in there. Otherwise you just spend ages coiling it up inside your locomotive. And then I had lots of leftover bits of wire to just kind of fill up my modeling desk. What I started doing was using that really thin gauge wire to create the multiple unit cables, those things, on the front of the locomotive as well. So yeah, that was something, recycling, upcycling, whatever it is. But was trying to figure out different ways to do it and found that. So the way I did those is it had like the little spots for them on the front of the locomotive, but I wanted to actually have something hanging out of there. I drilled a couple of tiny little holes, because that wire is tiny, into the front of the locomotive, and with that wire, cut it to the length that I wanted, just that little loop there, and applied just a tiny bit of solder to the ends of the wire, just to give it a little bit of stiffness, to be able to glue in. And when you're trying to poke it in the hole, you don't want it fraying and going everywhere. So yeah, that's it. The other part of that was creating the little caps. Usually on the multiple unit cables, they've got a little cap. When they lift it up, plug it in, it sits on the top. So just as a representation, and it came out of just my modeling supplies, was some 1 millimeter styrene rod. So you can send that around and have a look at that. The most difficult part of doing this is the little tiny piece that you're doing yourself is getting it cut straight on both sides. So you get however many lengths in a packet, and you're only using like 1 or 2 mils of it. If you get one that's a bit wonky, cut it off, start again, and keep going. I think to get the 4 on here, I probably cut about 20. So there was a lot of little white dots scattered around my modeling table at the end of it, but they came out looking pretty good. And it's again adding that little bit of detail to your model, and a little bit of interest, and then just the tiniest little bit of paint on them to match. The loco that I was modeling had a red and a green, so I did a little bit of red and green. But definitely look at your prototype photos and try and find a photo of something that has them there and ready to go, and you'll get a good idea. And just to form the shape of it, once the ends were glued in, I just got a little bit of toothpick and pulled down, and then it pulled them down straight and made it look like they were hanging there as they were meant to do. So yeah, there's a little bit of everything that I just said. Are there any questions on the... Well, yeah, go for it.
You said before about drilling the little holes for those
Yep.
fine cables. Any tips on, when using like a 0.1 or a 0.2 mil drill, not breaking it?
Yes, buy a Proxen stand-up drill. That's the best tip I can say with, or a little hobby stand-up drill, like, the drill press. I was drilling lots and lots of holes and having the same problem as you, especially like little handrails or little door handles and things like that. I'll send this around anyway. If you have a look, there's all little door handles down this model. Tiniest little bent ones that I did in, and I was losing drill bits in it all the time. So I invested in one of the Proxen stand-up drill presses, and you can get titanium drill bits that come in a little clear packet. I've got all different colors around them, so you know which size is which. What was that? Ah, there you go. Those the stand-up drill press with the little titanium drill bits has saved me so much time and pulling out of my hair when I'm doing lots of the drilling. You always get a good hole to drill into and then to use going from there. So yeah, and that's my biggest tip on hand drilling, or if you're hand drilling on tiny little holes, is to invest in something that's going to make it stable. And then all you really need to worry about, if you've got one of those stand-up drills, is holding the model nice and secure, so you don't get any movement on your drill bit and snap it off. You'll get the occasional snappages on one of the stand-up drills, and generally that's when you're taking the model out. You end up brushing the drill bit and snapping it. Yeah.
I'm a trained jeweler, so
Ah.
I do it by hand,
You do it by hand?
and I can go down to half a mil
Oh wow.
drill
Yeah.
without breaking them.
That's
Every
all right.
time I've tried to use a drill press, I've broken the drill bit.
Have you? Look, another tip, if you are wanting to do it by hand, if you've got your little drill, I generally have shaky hands as well. Like, I don't know what it is, but, you know, I just stand there and coffee, yes. Yep. The excitement of modeling as well. If I'm doing it, I hope everyone can see this, but I'll hold the drill from the top like that. And then, you know, use just the weight of my finger holding down and slowly just turn. And remember to turn backwards as well. So you do a couple of turns forward and a turn backwards, and it allows it to clear all the debris. Yeah. Otherwise, what you can do is you can twist the drill because everything gets stuck in there, and that's where breakages occur. You know, breathe before you do it. Don't breathe and then breathe after you do it. Don't have any distractions running around. I've got a cat that likes to run around, and whenever I was doing hand drilling, the cat would go in the bedroom and be banished, just in case.
You know, I can say,
Yeah?
don't have it really sharp, and you don't need a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
You only just need enough to do all the cutting action to occur, and that's it.
Yeah.
You alluded to it when you said just.
Yeah, just the pressure of your finger almost sitting on it, and the weight of the actual, you know, like the little hand drill that you're using is enough to start digging out, especially when you're using, you know, plastics and resins and things like that. It doesn't require much to go in, and the more pressure you put on it, the more chance it's going to bend and snap. So yeah, you lightly hold your finger on top and swivel the drill, or get a drill press, because those will change your life. All right, so yeah, that was the MU cables for that one. There we go. So there's a close-up image of it with a red rectangle in case you miss it. And then just some other details that I put on. Some air hoses, which I got from BLMA, and it's the same thing as adding in the MU cables, is just drilling a hole, gluing them in, making sure they're in straight. And it just adds to, you know, especially a cast that you might have that doesn't have all the detail on there. If you've got like a bare pilot on the casting, you know, finding these little detail bits from various suppliers can really help. Those ones have like the little tap hoses on there at the top, so they've got extra detail in there. But if you're not looking to buy things like that, just bending some wire, like the right size looking wire, bending it around and inserting it into the holes, that can work really well as well. You know, especially if you follow the 2-foot rule of standing back from your model and appreciating it from there, and not doing close-up photography like this. A little bit of wire to replicate those, the air hoses, and that, you know, really elevates the look of the model there as well. Any questions on that one?
Just a little
Yep.
trick with using wire.
Yeah?
Just crush the end of it and smooth part of it.
Yeah. Yep.
Gives you a glad hand.
Yeah, definitely, and it's exactly right. Yeah, you can crush the wire. You can also, like, you know, put a metal ruler on it and give it a tap with a, you know, with a hammer or something to create little indents in there. You can file away at things. You know, just take your time and kind of practice and experiment to see what looks good. One thing that I do when I'm putting something like this together is I'll get a sheet of cardboard. I've got this poor piece of cardboard that's had many holes drilled in it, many things glued to it, just to give it a test paint, so you're not doing it on your actual model and can see how it looks once it's been painted and what detail, extra things that you can add to it. So that's definitely something to give it a shot. Next thing as well is just I added cut levers to this one, and again you can either bend them out of wire yourself, just have a look at the actual prototype, what shape they are, or you can take the easy route and order them from a supplier like I did. And again, you know, on the front of a plain casting, that can look really, really good and add that extra detail to your model. So there's a couple little things there. Any questions on the details on the front of the model? No? Cool. All right. Next thing is a little trick I learnt with handrails. I'll hand this around. Just don't drop it, please. It's an actual model. If you have a look along the top of the hood, I've used Loco lift rings, again, available from suppliers. Again, BLMA is the one where I got them from. I think they're now owned by Atlas, so you can get the detail parts through there. But using the Loco lift rings to create the little grabby bits for the handrails. So on the model that's going around, which is pictured here, just a bit of wire inserted through the lift rings. Again, drilled out all those little holes with my drill press to save myself from going insane. And adding those little handrails down there, just so you've got extra little bits of detail. What I did is just soldered the end ones on, so it held the handrail in there once it was all cut down to size. And as long as you keep your drill lines incredibly straight and well, that your handrail doesn't go wiggling all the way down there, it should be pretty easy to do once you kind of do it at least the first 5 times, and then by the end of the locomotive, you're an expert at it, because you have to do it about 20 times for some. So yeah, any questions on that part? All right, cool. All right. The last thing I'm going to talk about, and then we'll have a bit of question and answers. It's a bit of a shorter clinic, this one, so I'll give you a bit of free time at the end, is flush glazing windows. So I always wanted to have flush glazed windows on my rolling stock. I think it looks quite nice and quite lovely. And when you come up at the end, have a look at the G-Class that's sitting up there. That has the flush glazed windows on there. But yeah, I think I invented my own little technique of doing it. So I wanted to share that with everyone here. The things you'll need is I use acetate from an art shop, which is the stuff that they use for overhead projectors. I remember in school, and that's where I used it. So get the clear sheeting of acetate, and that's what makes your windows. You'll see a whole bunch of holes punched in on it. We'll talk about that in a minute. So if you want to send it around, have a look. It's just some acetate sheeting. Need some toothpicks, some microcrystal clear, glasses cleaner cloth. So, you know, your little microfiber cloths that you use to clean glasses, and that is really handy. And a little window applicator tool, which I made. And I thought there was only going to be about 20 people here. I made 20. So you might have to like fight over them, or they're pretty simple. If you want to make your own, it's a toothpick and a bit of plastic and a tiny bit of glue. So I've got them up here, and if you want to grab one, go for it. But that's how I drop the windows in place, which we'll talk about now. So that's my little window applicator. It's a toothpick with a little bit of flat plastic glued on the end, and a little triangle or little rolled out piece of blue tack on the end. And that's what you use. Pass it around, go for it. Go for it. That's what you use to pick up your windows with. So if you want to start cutting out tiny little windows and dropping them into a model to be flush glazed, you use the toothpick with the blue tack on the end. Because of the thickness of the acetate and the size of the windows that you're doing in N scale, the tiniest little bit of blue tack on the end, like that little tip of it there, is usually enough to pick up the window, get it into place, and then allow the glue that's holding in the window to hold that in and pull that off without creating a mess. All right, so a way to cut the acetate, and you know what, there might be someone here with a much better way, and I'd really like to hear it, because I find it a little bit difficult sometimes, but I'll walk you through it, is I will use my cutting mat, and I'll line my cutting mat, my steel ruler, up on my cutting mat and clamp it in place. and then that way you know you've got a straight edge there. You'll put your acetate sheet down onto your cutting mat there, and then use another ruler to then you know, determine the size or the height of the window that you're going to use. Especially if you're doing like a passenger car that has multiple of the same window that are the same height but different lengths, it's easier to cut your piece of acetate to the height of the window, so you can then slice it up into the lengths of the window that go along there. Another little trick you can use is when you're lining it up to cut it straight, before you do it, if you cut a little spacer to put in between your two ends of your ruler, the two little spacers will hold the ruler in place when you're cutting the acetate down. It's pretty tricky to show on the thing. There is a piece of acetate in that picture, but because it's clear, it's very hard to see. But yeah, you'd put your acetate in, have it up against your ruler flat edge, and then yeah, use your spacers, or I'm a little bit crazy, I like to line it up by eye. I find the spacers to be a bit fiddly, but yeah, I'll line it up by eye and then cut to get my then strip of windows that I'm going to use. There's that thing. All right. Any questions on that part as the acetate makes its way around the room? No? Cool. All right. So you get your little strip of window then, and your length of it. And then the next part is to cut it up into the individual windows. What you can do as well, again, because we're modelling in N scale and our windows are tiny, if you cut it on a little bit of a wonky angle, just try and get your acetate back looking straight lined, and then just go again. And you'll end up with lots of little bits of plastic acetate around the place. But yeah, what you can then do is cut it into size to fit your windows. So on the model that Ray has at the moment, there's a side that has windows on it, and there's a side that only has one window on it. The side that only has one window on it is that little piece of window that I've got there. That's the piece that I used as I was doing the photos for this. The next part of this is, you can see on that window, there's a lot of scuff marks, there's finger marks because you've been holding it. Use a glasses cleaner and just get your little bit of window in there and just rub it to clean it off, so you've got no fingerprints and things that you're going to permanently set into your model's windows. If they're on the front, it's not too bad, you can still wipe them off with that, but if you get it on the inside, yeah, you're kind of stuck with a fingerprint on your window. So using a bit of glasses cleaner to clean off that acetate, getting it ready and put into place is a really important step. And then what you do is, once you've done that, drop it onto your modelling mat and don't touch it again. If you do touch it again, clean it again, because you end up with fingerprints on there. So yeah.
You're not chamfering the corners?
No, not chamfering the corners. Like, it's really thin acetate. You know, it's you can get thicker ones, which you might have to do, but I've just pretty much kept it as is. And yeah, and you know, obviously cutting it to the size of your window hole that you've got there. Because it's so thin, if you get it sitting a little bit proud, but you know, you can't really see it, it works okay. But yeah, always, you know, do a test fit and that. If your window falls through when you go to put it in, it's too small. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it is, it happens.
Sure, I'm going because they're too small.
What was that?
Is that why they fall through? Because they're too small?
Yep. Yep. If it's cut too short, you'll notice, yeah, on any of the things. If it's cut too big, it won't sit right. So just, again, experiment with this. You're only using tiny lengths of acetate, so a little bit of waste is to be expected. But if you want to get your windows looking nice and solid and good, play around with it a little bit. Glasses cleaner. And then, you know, you've prepared your model, you've painted it, you've got it to where you want to be. In the initial stages, if it's a casting especially, you want to make sure that you've got your window square. If you're having to file out windows and get rid of flashing, you want to really take a lot of time to make sure your windows are looking, or your window holes are square and everything's just right in there. What I'll usually do is go and do the whole model and then start back at the start, and you'll go, who let this one through? This one's all crooked and that, and then do it again, and then loop back around to the start of your model again, and do a couple of passes to make sure you get that window looking really, really good and square and very neat as well.
Can I ask you to pick the previous slide for a second, please?
There you go.
Thank you.
No worries. All right.
In a previous clip, Peter Borman said he uses Mod Podge. Gets a really flat window.
Oh, nice. Cool, cool. Yeah, yeah. Now this was something that I started doing because I wasn't overly happy with the results that microcrystal clear give on a bigger window. On a smaller window, it gives a, you can get away with it. But when you start getting to bigger windows, the microcrystal clear can bow, or you don't get like a real, clear look through it, even though it's called crystal clear. It's not the clearest look. So yeah. So then what I do is this is where the microcrystal clear does come into play, is running a small bead, and you don't need much of it, but running a small bead around where you're going to pop your window in. And yeah, so that gets it ready to accept the window. And then this is where you get onto the applicator. Has everyone almost seen one? Yep. Do you guys see one of the applicators? Pass it around. There we go. All right. So again, yeah, just that flat bit of plastic with the blue tack on the end of it. You'll pick up the window, take it over to your model, drop it into place. And if the blue tack is just a little bit tacky and doesn't want to release, and you notice that it's pulling the window back out again, a little twist while it's in place, and especially if you've got it just right that it actually fits in the window frame without dropping through, a little twist will release it. But that's why the blue tack is rolled down to a thin point, so there's not much of a surface area to hold it. You just need to really pick it up from, wherever it's dropped out of your glasses cleaning cloth onto the model there. And then it's repeat for all the windows down your model. And if you've got a model with lots of windows, you'll end up an expert at it by the end of it. Yeah, if anyone's had a look over at Lyndon's stand, there's the Victorian Railway Z cars. The AZ car has 1 million windows down the side. And I found that by the end of doing 3 of those, as long as I cut my window strip straight, I could then cut by sight the width of the window, because I'd done it, I don't know, I haven't counted the actual windows on there, but I feel like there's at least 30, at least, on both sides of the model. 26, is that each side or all together? 26 per side. Yeah, so by the time you've cut all those windows out, you know exactly how wide your window needs to be. You'll cut it, you'll drop it in, and it will become a little production line.
You're insane at the end of it.
Yes, yeah, you do. It's a definite brain damage kind of territory when you're doing that. But the results that it give you, it looks amazing. And the acetate, the way it reflects light, it makes it feel real. Especially when you're filming a model or something like that, and it passes by and all the windows individually catch the light. It just looks fantastic. So that's why I really like doing it to a model. So there's with that one window dropped in, and just leave it until the microcrystal clear dries. And the lesser the microcrystal clear that you use, the cleaner the line around the window is going to be. But as we know, as that model's making its way around the room, it's half a centimetre by half a centimetre wide. So that little thin bead is really quite small. So yeah, you don't really see it too much. But yeah, it definitely helps to have that. So there's a W class that I'll put together there, one of Phil Badger's ones. And with the W class, it has rounded corners on the windows. So all I did with that was just snip off the tiniest little bit of the corner of the window to create like a little 45-degree shaver there. And anything that the roundness of the window, the microcrystal clear fills in as well. So it still gives you a flat look using a 45-degree. Trying to cut an actual little curve on something that tiny is not worth your time. I tried it and it's not worth your time. So just that little 45-degree nick, just the slightest little corner, and again test fitting it will definitely get your window looking good. And then I've built a velocity, as you can see in the lower one, and the same method I use to glue the windows on the outside of the velocity, because that's how it is in the prototype. So instead of having windows in a frame, it has the window panel all the way down the side of the model, and just using the same thing of a really small bead of micro crystal clear to get the windows to sit in on that. All right. Hey, we're at the end. Does anyone have any questions about anything here? Ah, good. There was a slide at some point. There we go. There is a slide about that. All right, so the holes in the acetate I needed for the G-Class again, which if you want to pop up at the end and have a look at it, has the round portholes down the side, as a lot of locomotives do. About $9 from Spotlight, hole punch. The holes were 3 mils down the side. Googled a 3 mil hole punch. First thing that popped up was $9 from Spotlight. Make sure you get one that allows you to open up and get the puck, the window puck out, because you don't want the hole, you want the inside of the hole. Yep.
You can get some little rotary ones that do the same, and
Yeah.
different sizes on them.
Yeah. Like almost like the leather punches. Yeah. But what you got to remember is you want the thing that comes out of it. So with the leather ones, sometimes it's just a little indent, and it can get stuck in there. So you got to be a bit careful. So I went with a flat punch that just punches it straight out, and it catches it in the bottom here. And 8 windows on the side of that model. Whoever's got the acetate would see there's a lot more than 8 holes punched into it. So again, trial and error. Do a really solid punch. If you don't punch it all the way through, it'll have little dangly bits and things like that you end up having to cut off. And exactly the same process of putting it in between your glasses cleaner, using the little applicator to drop it in place with a bit of micro crystal clear in there. Yeah, that's the end now. All right, thank you. Cheers. Oh yeah? Yeah, questions, go for it. Or if you want to pop up and have a look at the models, go for it. If you want to grab yourself a window applicator, they are there for you.
You want burning? Come on, you got a question. Surely it's one. Burning away in the head somewhere.
It's either that or I was just that thorough.
Saw that? That was it? Oh.
All right.
Well, thanks, Corey. Hopefully,
Cheers, mate.
everyone got something out of that.
Yep.
Give him a bit of round of applause. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
The next modelling competition is going to be hard after this, isn't it? Detail.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. If you want to pop up and have a look at something close up, please do.